Hello everyone, welcome back to Morgan Hasn't Seen from the start of an exciting new series, a very intense new series.
Yes.
A new series that's going to get a little bit nasty and cause a lot of shouting and maybe people going a little bit insane, because what does Michael Douglas do better than shout at his own family, break up his own family, and go a little bit insane? Although he might not break up his own family in this movie, I suppose, but he's very good at that kind of stressed out, middle-aged, white collar craziness,
Yeah.
isn't he? He's very, very good at it. We've found the idiosyncrasy, not that it's very hard to find in Michael Douglas, and we have crafted, well, I have crafted, I've not crafted anything. Jeannine has crafted a
Yes.
lovely series for September on Michael Douglas, featuring some big name movies, including this one. To start us off with, Jeannine, Fatal Attraction is a big move.
Yes. I mean, I wasn't really planning to make this a Michael Douglas erotic thriller series, but it was just a very specific vein of films that he did in a very particular time in his career, and they were
Yeah,
just happened to all be movies you hadn't seen. So our final film will be more of a dark comedy, but we are definitely talking
yeah.
3 prevalent Michael Douglas erotic thrillers. So,
Well, I even think that last movie we're covering, which I think is The War of the Roses, is
yeah.
still a like domestic dispute movie,
Oh,
isn't it?
yes. Yes.
A divorce movie, I think, isn't
Yeah,
it? So,
yes. Battle of
you know,
the sexes, battle between husband and wife, a very brutal divorce, like the extreme of divorces.
to a darkly hilarious
Yes,
degree.
yes, with Danny
I
DeVito's direction, it gets a
yes.
little comedic for sure.
I enjoy the sound of that. But look, whether it's that movie or whether it's his erotic thrillers, there is a certain constant gender power dynamic on display in these Michael Douglas movies. He's able to play in those movies so well and just bring that level of stress out. I think he's an incredibly stressful actor to watch,
Yes,
and
especially
that's
with,
the great
like,
thing about him.
yes, and I think in the 3 films that fit this genre, he's working against actresses who are portraying very domineering, dominant
Yeah,
females, women. So that'll be kind of interesting to see, your reaction to the
yeah.
dynamics between him and these female characters.
In different ways as well, I
Mm,
suppose, because obviously in this we've got Glenn Close,
yeah.
Alex Forrest, who is just completely unhinged. Like there's no controlling her at all. She
Yeah.
can't even control herself an awful lot of the time, and she just goes with whims, goes with pure instinct in
Yeah.
what she has to do, what she feels she needs to do, and it's a much kind of heavier movie and a much more twisted movie than I maybe thought it was. Maybe
Okay.
twisted's the wrong word, but it goes to some really dark places
Yeah.
with Alex that I didn't think it would do. I envisioned Fatal Attraction as being a little bit more Glenn Close wants to kill Michael Douglas for spurning her
Oh, okay.
or scorning her, and maybe wants to ruin his life
Okay.
rather
More
than
her just
ruin
is
her own life.
incessantly wanting to still be with him.
Yeah, rather than it be that, because you know, is Michael Douglas really that completely? Do people get really that insatiable over Michael Douglas that they
Well,
just can't
that
not have him?
that's definitely something I wanna talk about in this series because this film has women wanting to be with him and wanting to pursue him to some degree.
To a
Um,
dangerous degree.
Yes, and, I wouldn't consider Michael Douglas your conventionally attractive leading man. So I definitely wanna get into, and I think, it's a running thing on both shows with me about, my attracted level to male leading actors in the films we just got.
Yes.
So definitely something I wanna get into in terms of why, he is the person to be tapped for all of these roles where he is seen as this kind of desirable figure when he's not the conventional kind of attractive Hollywood man.
I like the idea of that discussion. Jeannine's crush list is something that I
Yes.
also very much enjoy. I think before we get into more discussion on Fatal Attraction and all its nonsense, I say nonsense, not nonsense. It all makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Well, doesn't it really? But it's crazy anyway. We do have to say a big thank you to all our It's a Wonderful Podcast
Yes.
patrons, who we of course love dearly, and like to say a big thank you to every single week on one of the
We do.
shows here on the podcast feed. If you want to join them and join us on the Patreon, there are links in the description to do that. There's also a donation link down there as well. We would love you forever. We can't do what we do without this generous support. Thank you, first of all, of course, to Adam Witt.
And thank you, Michael Smith.
Thank you to Abby Friel.
And thank you, Ferris Muthana.
Thank you to Jeannine's big brother Justin, 90s Comics Box.
And thank you, Tina Farrow.
Thank you to Marcus Burton.
Thank you to Movie Fanobi Steve. And congratulations on your engagement.
Very much so, yes. Thank you to Samir Tesfaye.
And thank you, Patrick Harden.
Thank you to Carla Feast.
Thank you to the great Ken Knapsack.
Thank you to Tom and Kimber of the Odd Shape channel.
Thank you, Eric Garcia.
And thank you, of course, to Billy Polahan. Yes.
Yay.
Applause for the patrons, applause for the movie, as we always like to say, because the movie is incredibly good, actually. I know
Okay.
it's a big name movie. I like it when we cover these big name, famous movies on the
Yes.
organic scene. We've done quite a number of them this year, it feels, or at least a good chunk of really, really sizable movies. Sometimes in the series, we've gone for a somewhat smaller movie or a more under the radar movie, and it's
Yeah.
nice to shine a light on those, of course. Those are ones that I have justifiably missed, I think. But something of this size, of this scale, of this fame. I mean, what's this, like 6-time Oscar nominee or
Oh,
something
yeah.
like that? Fatal
Yes.
Attraction. Glenn Close was nominated. I think it was up for
Yes.
Best Picture. It's a very, very big,
Acclaimed. Yeah.
a very, very acclaimed movie, and rightfully so, because it creates this such uneasy quality to
Yeah.
it the entire time. You're so on edge the entire time. You are not allowed a quiet moment. As soon as he meets Alex, there's the unspoken spark.
Oh, yeah. There's a
I don't think
charge between them for sure.
there's a serious charge, and that is, I think, one thing that allows Michael Douglas to be able to play in these movies so well. In that he might not look like Paul Newman, you know,
Yes,
but he has the ability to just get a bit feral in his eyes, like
Yes.
really, really well, and zone in on something he's focused in. And when he's focused on it, you sense more focus in Michael Douglas than you do in most other people. And that is what allows him, I think, to get into these obsessive kind of movies, get
Yeah.
into these really, difficult situation that you put yourself in kind of movies, because he's not been able to focus on anything else other than, in this case, Alex Forrest. And you believe that entirely with Michael Douglas's face, with his performance in
Yeah.
these kind of movies.
Yes, and so that was something I had to think about. I'm like, why was he tapped for this particular era to play this character who's being, is incessantly pursued by these beautiful women in these films because, yeah, he doesn't look like a Paul Newman. And, in just generally thinking about the characters that Michael Douglas has played, I don't think he's ever played a mousy, sad, dumpy kind of
No.
character. He's always played a man of confidence, a man who knows who
Mm.
he is, a man who goes after what he wants, um, and has this self-assuredness, this power about him. I can't think of a Michael Douglas character that wasn't a confident character. And so the fact that he gives that aura in pretty much any role that I can think of off the top of my head, I think is what gives him that attractiveness and gives him
Yeah.
that swagger, of what this type of character would need. So,
I suppose even when he has no right to be confident or self-assured at
he
all because
always
he's got
is.
himself into such a mess,
Yes.
he is, and he has faith that somehow he will get himself out of
It'll be
whatever
figured out.
situation.
Yeah.
Like, look at something like The Game, which is just crazy that he finds himself in that entire situation. You somehow never doubt that he'll end up
He'll
finding
figure
his
it
way
out.
out of it.
Yes, he'll find a way, and he's
Or,
confident
you
that he'll
know,
find a way. Yeah.
falling down or something like that, which is
Yes.
him going completely insane, but somehow
Still
it
very
seems
measured and confident and resolute in
justified
what he's doing. Yeah. He has you
and
believing that what he's doing is justified. So, yeah,
it's
like, you could literally
insane.
pull any Michael Douglas character, and not one of them that I can think of is, like, a mousy, s squirrely, like,
Yeah,
cuckold kind of guy. Like, he is always
yeah,
somebody who
never.
carries himself well, who's confident, who knows what he wants, who goes after what he wants, who, is very resolute in what he's doing. And so I think that air of confidence is definitely an attractive factor in his characters that works in this film for sure. So,
And maybe it's because in this time, obviously, the late 80s, early 90s, erotic thriller, domestic thriller kind of boom.
yeah,
He always does play the white collar figure as
yeah,
well, the financial worker, the banker, the lawyer, the you know somebody of that job title
yeah,
that shouldn't, but does bring this certain aura of, I suppose, fanciness with it,
yeah,
and always in a suit, always looking, you know, quite well presented, really, clean shaven, good hair, all this kind of stuff. I suppose falling down maybe the opposite of that. He's kind of half white collar in that. He's a little bit lower.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that wearing that horrible short sleeve
Sleeve
shirt,
shirt with the tie, the very Dwight Schrute look.
stupid hairstyle.
Yes.
But I'm thinking more in movies like this, and in the movies we're obviously going to be covering. He looks so well presented, yet inside himself must just be a complete mess, and it must be in Fatal Attraction, right?
Well,
For the
yeah,
the vast majority of this movie.
but even
Yes,
in
it
the
starts
beginning.
off very well. He's got a nice family, but he's still a little bit, stressed out, and there's things going on.
Yes, which I think is what causes him to even be drawn to Alex in this affair, because we establish this kind of hectic, chaotic family life. The dog, you have to take him out, and it's running around and
Yeah,
eating things, and you can't sleep with your wife tonight because the daughter jumps into the bed, and you know just the chaos of getting her to school and your job and your wife and your family life and all of that kind of thing, and they're in this kind of small apartment. So we kind of open with this chaotic family situation. So when he does get this opportunity outside of that for someone to see him not in that vein, somebody attracted to him not in his everyday life, um, it's enticing to him. It's something different. It's a
yeah.
break from the monotony of the family life. So he may love his family and love his daughter and his wife and everything, but to kind of just escape that, even for a brief moment, is attractive to him because of just
Yeah.
the chaotic setup and the stress of that day to day that they set up in the very beginning of the movie.
And I think he does. I don't think you ever doubt that he cares about his family. You
Yeah.
don't ever doubt that he loves his wife and his daughter or anything like that. It is very much a a one-time mistake gone the worst way it could possibly go
Yeah.
kind of situation, this movie. That's the
Yes.
point of the movie, I
Yeah.
suppose, isn't it? It is, look at what this innocuous thing has led to. Unfortunately, this innocuous thing has happened with the most dangerous woman on the planet.
Yeah.
And now you have to deal with this, Michael Douglas. Oh, what a silly person you are for even doing this.
Yeah.
And not knowing who Glenn Close was, because she doesn't come across as anything that she turns into when we first
Yeah,
meet her.
no,
She's
she comes off as very
really lovely.
confident. Yeah, she's this
Yeah.
very stylish, confident, successful, woman who's able to project this air to him and just kind of give him these eyes, like she knows what she's doing, the way she holds her cigarettes, her very sharp
Oh
outfit.
yeah.
She
Very
knows what
much
she's
matching
doing.
the energy.
Yes, and so when things start to unravel with her, it's this you realize that person that she was projecting was a total facade. She was trying to match his energy to, attract him, and then once she kind of eased him in, the true self started coming out.
Maybe that's what these movies are really about, and maybe that's what kind of Michael Douglas is really about. His movies of this kind, whether it's him or his female lead, are two very confident on the surface people, but one of them is pretending.
Yeah.
Whether it's him or whether it's, in this movie, whether it's Glenn Close, but sometimes it is him. Sometimes it is him who's the one pretending to have
Yeah.
this aura of confidence and then can unravel in his own head
Yeah.
rather than, somebody be doing it to him. And I think that's important for this kind of movie. And it's also important that they're able to believably put that
Yeah.
on the screen because something like Fatal Attraction could quite easily come across as so unbelievably extra and over the top and utterly insane that at times it could turn into a rather silly 80s horror movie if it
Yeah.
wanted to, but it never does because it grounds itself so much and it allows itself the world of reality, to live in the world of reality
Yeah.
so much that you just entirely believe that what's going on could quite easily happen because there are people like Glenn Close in this movie who find themselves, maybe after one nothing night with somebody, whatever the situation might be.
Yeah.
And you could be 18 in a nightclub somewhere, and you find yourself after one particular time with somebody completely obsessed with him. You see it all the time on various
Yeah.
social media. 87 missed calls and constant long paragraph messages from some random person you don't even
Yeah.
know. It's like, it's just a bit too much, isn't it? And there's people like this with this sort of, I don't know whether it's an attachment style. I know that's a
Or
thing
just,
going
this
around.
this pure loneliness kind of thing, because if
Yeah,
you notice, it starts out as this mutual passionate thing, so you think
very
there's this
much so.
understanding between them because there's nothing beyond kind of the physical spark,
No.
and the kind of rush of it all, but then Alex slowly, gradually tries to make it a little bit more. Come over for dinner, bring your dog, we'll go play in the park, and makes
Yeah.
it more into this quality time thing. And so, he seems hesitant to do all of that because for him, he thought they were on the same page that this was just a physical spark. Um, but he feels like it's innocent enough if, we spend a little bit of quality time together. I come over for dinner, we talk about Madame Butterfly, no big deal.
Yeah.
Um, but on her end, she's seeing this as a burgeoning relationship. So
Yeah.
the fact that he doesn't know her and understand that that's, gets them off the same page, and that's where things kind of go awry.
There's no communication.
No,
There's none
no.
at all. There's nothing. It's
Yes, because it
terrible.
opens with very little communication because it's all passion. I mean, even the kind of beginning of the affair is very kind of well played and like kind of a perfect situation. His wife is away for the weekend and they get caught in the rain together and,
Yeah.
can't get a cab. So they duck into a little place to get a drink and dinner, and they're sitting across from each other. She's wearing like this low cut dress, and they're just kind of giving each other these eyes and being very flirty. So it's this perfect setup for this to happen. And yeah, then it just kind of builds into this exciting thing for him, this exciting thing outside of his everyday. And he thinks that's all it
Yeah.
needs to be, that's all it will be. So I like kind of that juxtaposition. We see his chaotic family life. So we kind of see him already a bit maybe fed up and stressed about, how his life is going, and this need for something exciting. So then
Yeah.
juxtapose that with her coming in, and it's just perfect timing to just make all of this make sense and still feel grounded.
Sometimes though, I feel like in movies, whether it's a rom-com, whether it's, something of this thrilling level or a drama level, if it's like a domestic affair kind of movie, like the wife in this case would be presented as way worse than, Anne Archer is in this
Yes, like she
movie,
would be overbearing and try to give him a reason to cheat. Oh my gosh, his wife is so terrible. She treats him like crap, you
because
know.
she's really not. She's just lovely.
No. Yeah, she's great. So I like that they make her great and it's not an issue of him straying because she's terrible.
Yeah.
So I like that they don't give him this out or this excuse that we're supposed to sympathize with him. He's literally just a human person. So I like that they
Everybody
don't.
is in the movie.
Exactly. Like, I don't need a reason to feel bad for him in this situation. I'm just seeing a person doing a thing. It's very much
Yeah.
of the minds of multiple things can be true. This man can believably love his family, but it can also want an
And
escape from that.
yeah, and
And,
believably
we can,
want the
yeah,
escape.
exactly, and we can just view that as that's what the situation is. You don't have to do anything, any kind of emotional manipulation to make us either hate or love him because of his choices. He's just a person making these choices and then paying the consequences for them, and we can observe that without, going either way. So I like that the movie isn't, emotionally manipulating us to side with him or feel bad for him, um, on either side of things.
I think that's just another great thing about Michael Douglas, though, as well,
Yeah,
is that he does bring that nuance to
yeah,
these sort of characters where he does always feel very, very deep. He always feels very, very human, very, very
yeah,
flawed
yeah,
all the time because everybody is flawed to a
yeah.
certain degree. And, at times in movies, we can forget that because we get sometimes perfect people or
Yes, our
totally
protagonist is always doing the
imperfect
right
people.
thing, and there's all these things to make us love them and root for them. This film is
Yeah.
not trying to get us to root for him. It's also not trying to get us to, like, outright hate him either. He's just a
No, it's not
human
trying to.
being who has made these decisions, has made these mistakes, and then we see him pay the consequences for them. So, we're not rooting for him to get punished because the movie's already doing that for us.
Yeah, you don't get any character satisfaction really out of this movie. What you get out of this movie is 2 hours of intense build up. You
Yeah.
you get 2 hours of on the edge thrill. You
Yeah.
you don't get a gentle character arc going, "Oh, wasn't that satisfying?" Like, ultimately, are you satisfied at the end of the movie? I would say you are
Yeah.
satisfied with the story at the end of the movie, sure, but you're satisfied more from the fact that you've been relieved of the stress of the last, well,
Yeah.
at least 90 minutes, if not the full 2 hours of
Yes, as we
movie.
get into her descent, yeah, for sure.
You're not necessarily, you don't feel like Michael Douglas has gone through this journey as a person at all. You just feel like he's found himself in a situation and had to deal with it in whatever way
Yeah,
he
like,
possibly could.
he doesn't change who he is, he's still the same person, it's just how
Nobody
he
does.
navigates this situation. Um, and, yeah, it's not really a change in Alex, it's just who she always was, and she was hiding it
Yeah,
for that first part of the movie.
you just
Um,
have to find it.
yes, and so for Glenn Close, definitely deserving of a nomination here with, starting the film as this kind of sexy, confident woman, and then gradually just descending to, this insane person. Because I think it starts when, he tells her he has to leave, and she
Yeah.
can't handle it. She wants him to stay, and she gets mad at him, and then she starts kind of like ripping her shirt and trying to get him to stay and hitting him and kicking
Mm.
him. And so then when he leaves, she tries to, profusely apologize. And he's like, no, like, I have to go. Like, I have a whole other relationship. I can't do this. And then, she slits her wrists and gets him to stay that way.
You see,
Eh, yeah.
it's that that happens quite early on in the movie
Yeah.
that I think made me
Kind of
think twice
okay.
about what Fatal Attraction actually was,
Yeah.
rather than what I thought it I thought it was gonna be. Because, as I said, what I thought it was gonna be was that Michael Douglas finds himself in an affair with a dangerous person,
Who ends
not
up being
with
scorned. Yeah.
who ends up being scorned, not Michael Douglas finds himself in an affair with a deeply unwell person, which is what we get. I thought Glenn Close was going to be supremely confident in this movie, as opposed
Oh,
to almost, and please don't, take this the wrong way, pathetic.
yeah.
Which she kind of like, it's a harsh word to
Yeah,
use,
no,
but
but I know what you
she
mean.
is she's
It's
very,
desperate. Oh,
very desperate, very, very, you know, a shell of a person, really, and doesn't know where her own head's at, totally messed up, totally clouded, needs a great deal of help.
yeah.
And, there's plenty of people like that out there in various ways, of course there are. But I genuinely thought this was gonna be supremely confident. No,
Throughout.
I'm gonna do whatever's necessary. I'm Glenn Close. I want you, and I'm not gonna have you. Okay, nobody gets to have you then. Stabby,
Ah,
stabby,
okay.
pursue,
Okay.
pursue, murder, murder. Let's
Yeah.
destroy your entire life, kind of situation.
Yeah. Not her
Not,
incessantly doing all of these things to try to get him back.
yeah. Like, I thought that was the fatal attraction. The
Okay.
fatal of Fatal Attraction was killing him, not kind of almost destroying herself, which is the
Yeah.
fatal, I think, of Fatal Attraction. The
Yes.
fatal of Fatal Attraction is Glenn Close, not Michael Douglas, and I always
Yeah.
thought it was Michael Douglas. Like,
Okay.
the fatal attraction is on her aspect,
Yes.
on her part, not Michael Douglas, which completely caught
Okay.
me off guard. It completely took me, to the other side of what I thought the movie was always, and I liked that. I liked that about it. I
Okay.
like
I
being
like
a
that it
little bit surprised as to
yes.
exactly what the movie was
Okay, no,
and
because
exactly what
I
the movie was gonna be.
I like to hear that it's switched itself up on you and you kind of went into it with this idea and it was completely different. Because I think most movies, particular popular movies that are in this like pop culture lexicon, you have a pretty good idea of what it's about, or you've seen clips and scenes, and so you're aware
Yeah.
of the
Like, I
concept
have
of the
seen
film.
clips and scenes, yeah,
Yes.
sure.
So the fact that it kind of ended up being not what you expected, it's nice. I like that.
Yeah. I'm conscious because I know we have something else to do, um, and I feel like it's a nice time to
Oh,
cut the episode in half a little bit
okay.
and
Mhm.
spend some time on some question answers, and then get
Yes.
back into a discussion on Fatal Attraction and the rest of what goes on throughout Glenn Close's descent into chaos
Yes. Yeah.
after this.
So we did get quite a few answers on our podcast question for our final episode of the Brave New Women series that we did on Morgan Hasn't Seen. So that
Yes, last
film
week.
was The First Wives Club, which features a trio of female actresses. So the question was, who is your favorite female trio in film?
Okay,
And we got quite a few answers here. Uh,
nice.
all over on TikTok. So we had Crystal, the super ghoul. She said Josie and the Pussycats. A really
Fair,
fun
fair
movie.
enough.
I've been trying to find a way to incorporate that into a series somewhere. So
I think you've been trying to find a way to incorporate that for years, to be honest.
yes. So if you have any ideas, let me know.
Mm.
My girl Peggy G, a former Schmodown competitor,
Ah,
she came with some deep cuts, so some characters you might not have heard of. So she
okay.
says, for some reason, what came to mind first was Jodie Sawyer, Ava Rodriguez, and Maureen Cummings. And she says, if you know, you know, which of course I knew because these are characters from the very niche ballet movie Center Stage.
Okay.
Yes, very popular in some circles. Um,
Some circles.
but she continues by saying, "But I gotta go with a recent favorite, Jenny, Aaron, and Blair from a newer film called Someone Great." And I
Okay.
believe the 3 actresses who play those characters, Gina Rodriguez, Brittany Snow, and, DeWanda Wise. So,
Oh, okay.
yes, which I
Fair.
recently watched that movie, it's pretty cute. And then we have Spectre Opaque said The Witches of Eastwick. Cher is
Nice.
delightful in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We,
great
we
pick as
like we
well.
like the Witches of Eastwick.
We did cover that in our Witches series, so check that out. The Final Girl says The First Wives Club is a huge comfort film for me. I also dig The Other Women. It's kind of in the same vein. So The Other Women, I believe, was Leslie Mann, Cameron Diaz, and model Kate Upton. It's kind of like the
Okay.
wife and the husband is Jamie Lannister.
Yeah.
um, Leslie Mann is his wife. She finds out he's having an affair with Cameron Diaz. And then Cameron Diaz finds out that he's cheating on her with Kate Upton. So then they all kind of team up against him.
Right. Okay. Fair.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that actually.
Yes. Yes. You will definitely enjoy this answer
Oh.
from the Ginger Dead Man 859. He says he's going with the Hex Girls from Scooby Doo and the
Oh, very
Witch's
nice.
Ghost.
Yes, we
Yes.
like that.
Yes. Grace Skywalker says the Sanderson sisters from Hocus Pocus.
Yes,
Great one.
yes.
2 of the Sanderson sisters in the First Wives Club, funnily enough. And final answer is from Megan Ash. She says, I do love Elise, Brenda, and Annie from the First Wives Club. For trios, they're my favorite, but I also love Cher, Dion, and Ty from Clueless.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. And she also throws some TV into the mix. Trio fave is Charm Sisters, Piper, Phoebe, and
Mm,
Prue. Also
fair
Paige.
enough.
So,
We like this.
yes.
A lot of great answers there.
Yes.
I do like those. Very nice to hear. Of course, keep an eye out for the question videos on the YouTube channel. Of course, it's a wonderful podcast. Subscribe, ding your notification bell, or of course on the various social medias that, of
Yes.
course, you can find links for in the description as well. And we'll get on to the plugs at the end of the episode, obviously. But do answer those questions. Do let us know what you think about them, as we do there. We read them out
We
on
do.
an episode of the show whenever we get new ones. It's very, very exciting. I like that they all came from the same question as
Yes, and
well.
all on the same video that I posted on TikTok. So, yeah, very, solid engagement for that question.
Very, very popular question. It's very good. Back to Fatal Attraction. We
Yes.
must get into the fact that one major step in Alex's ploy, game, whatever it is it even real? Probably not.
Yeah, and I was
Quite
gonna
so.
ask you, do you think that it's real when she does tell him that she's pregnant with his child?
Jeannine, I don't think it's real at all.
Yeah, I mean, she
And
could have definitely told this guy as her doctor to say whatever he needed to say when he called.
yeah,
So, you know.
I, I do not think it's real at all. Now, don't get me wrong. Fatal Attraction is a graphic movie. It does not hold back from depicting the violence of what goes on, sure, but also the sexiness of what goes on as well.
Yes, yes.
This is the nature of an erotic thriller. You need nastiness, but you also need like quote unquote nastiness, don't you?
Yes,
And
yes.
you need both types of nastiness in an erotic thriller, and you get that in the movie. So it's perfectly believable that Michael Douglas, given what we saw, could have got Glenn Close pregnant in the movie. I will continue to use the actors' names and not the characters' names of Dan and Alex.
Yes.
But did he? No. I don't believe a single word that comes out of Alex's mouth.
Yes. I mean, it's very hard to believe anything she says after a certain point because even after the suicide attempt when she slits her wrists, he kind of does the noble thing and stays with her, takes care of
He
her.
does. It's a very
Um,
horrible scene, though.
yes,
It's
because I think
tough.
any other man, as she says, like would have just ran away, but he stays there and takes care of her. And so she goes to his office and apologizes and tries to make a peace offering and says, "Are we good? Friends. Thank you for staying. I appreciate it." Um, but then she kind of ends that conversation with, "Well, as a peace offering, you said you liked Madame Butterfly. It's my favorite as well. I got tickets. Let's go." And he's like, I'm sorry, I can't." And
I don't
she
want to sit
seemed
through a 4-hour opera with you.
yes, that's a little too much, lady. Um, but things seem to end amicably, and
Mm.
then, we cut to the night of the Madame Butterfly, and she sat on the ground just putting a lamp on and off, like
Yeah, that is
yeah.
actually disturbing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it flashes between, or like fades quite slowly and almost beautifully between, Dan Michael Douglas and having pleasant family time
Yeah.
with his daughter and his wife around a fire. It's all very sweet,
Yeah.
to this really disturbing visual of her just disheveled and like teary black eyed.
Yes, like
Um,
runny mascara and just clicking this light on and off.
it's a
Yeah,
little bit terrifying. It's a
very
little bit
disturbing.
more where I thought Fatal Attraction was going to
Okay.
go to almost horror degree,
Yeah.
where you are just actually terrified of Glenn Close. Um, it's very, very effective though. I like it. Do you know what as well? Do you know what is great in this movie? And we don't talk about the aspect of movies um, that this is as much as we should. But Maurice Jarre, isn't it, with the music in the movie?
Oh,
The
yes,
it's
he's a
so good.
yeah, he's an incredibly underrated composer. Like, I think I took notice of his scoring at first in another movie we covered on Morgan Hasn't Seen, and that was A Walk in the Clouds, a Keanu Reeves film. I absolutely
Okay.
love the score he did for that movie. So whenever he pops up, I'm very much like in awe of his work and love to talk about his work because I think he's definitely not a name that's spoken enough when it comes to composers.
It's really this. really slow. It's operatic in
Yeah,
itself to a degree, but it's really slow
yeah.
and edgy in its
Yeah.
score as well. And by edgy, I don't mean like, "Ooh, cool, edgy." I mean like
Yeah,
it leaves you on edge.
dark and, yeah, tense and yeah.
It's a very tension-fueled music throughout the
Yeah,
entire movie. And, in scenes like this, flicking the light switch on and off, you are just completely enveloped by the music,
yeah,
and it adds so much to the heart-pounding nature at times of Fatal Attraction. Like, even in its quieter scenes, even in its slower moments, you're still very much on edge. A lot of that has to do with the music. I think music and performances are what strikes me most about Fatal Attraction. It's shot visually in a like a realistic way, in a like the stylishness isn't doesn't pop out at you. It's a well-made movie, a well put together movie. There's interesting lingers on
yeah.
certain things. I think it's crafted really well. But as far as like a visual style goes, it just wants to go for kind of this domestic believability rather than any sort of heightened level of crazy camera work or anything like that.
Yeah, no,
None of that.
everything feels really grounded, for sure.
But it adds so much. That's what they wanted to do when making the movie, obviously. Um, Emphasize all that with the tense music and obviously bring the performances it does out of the actors, then it all just works really, really well. I
Yeah.
mean, you're not sure how often you could watch Fatal Attraction. It's not something I think you would maybe want to put on all the time. Um,
No.
but that
E
that's just from, I think, kind of it's just a bit stressful. Um, but it's very good.
Yeah.
It's very enjoyable to a degree. It's just a stressful watch.
Well, of course, I mean, I is this a film that has any particular reason why you just never watched it?
No, I wouldn't say so. No, it's weird. I feel like with this Michael Douglas series, it's quite similar to the Costner one, where these are movies that, like, well,
This
yeah, I
was
could
just
have.
an era and decade of time of film that you didn't really watch.
Yeah, it's almost as though I was always well familiar with him and this period in movies, this
Yeah.
style of movies, this kind of thing, but for some reason just never delved into it. And of course, if I ever had, there would have been no reason to do a Michael Douglas series because I would have watched
Yeah.
all of these four movies
Yeah.
probably because they all fit into one thing, really, don't they?
Yeah.
Um, if you weren't aware, by the way, the other movies we are covering, we've mentioned The War of the Roses, but Basic Instinct will be on here as well as
Yes.
Disclosure.
Yes.
So, it's very much similar vibes going on.
Yeah.
But, there was no reason. There was no defined reason, um, because I do like Michael Douglas. I just haven't, watched it necessarily some of his bigger movies. It's very similar to Costner. I like Costner, but before the series that we did, I can't even remember when it was. March, April? I
Yeah, I
don't
think it was
remember
March
when
or
it was.
April. Yeah.
May? Um, May, I think, maybe. But
Oh, yes, yes.
the
You
I
hadn't really.
didn't I hadn't watched some of his bigger movies. Um, and we did Field of Dreams earlier on in the
Yeah.
year, didn't we? In January, I think.
January, mhm.
So obviously, why hadn't I watched that? It's just that kind of thing with this series. I think it's a why haven't I watched it? Why is it taking me this long to watch this? It's not annoying. It's not something I'm, you know, I feel pushed to watch or shamed that I haven't watched, a la Blade Runner or something like that, that we also managed to cover
Yeah.
this year, obviously. But it is a really, I should have probably watched these movies, but there is also, like, I can't imagine many 15-year-olds watching something like Fatal Attraction and getting entirely everything that is
That's
required to
going
get
on.
out of it.
Yes, or kind of understand the nuances of like what we talked about with Michael Douglas really not being a clear protagonist. He's just a guy in a situation kind of thing.
Like, it's a very mature movie, isn't it? It's a very
Oh
adult
yeah.
movie.
Yes.
You don't go into watching this as a teen,
No,
really,
no,
do you?
no.
And you might have been tempted to because you've seen this, you
Like,
see
ooh,
Basic
naked.
Instinct as well.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. You see this and you see, oh, okay, there's sexiness going on here.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where people would say, oh, you get to see this in this movie. It's like, what do you
Yeah.
mean you get to see this in this movie? Okay, whatever. Glenn Close is naked in this movie. Oh, exciting! It's like, yeah, okay. There's a sex scene. Why wouldn't she be? It's that kind of
Yes, you
situation.
need a level
Or
of maturity to kind of get into the themes and what's
you do.
happening in the film. Yeah.
Or you go into this from Basic Instinct, and obviously, what's the most famous thing about Basic Instinct? I don't even need to say it. We just know what the most
Yeah.
famous thing about Basic Instinct is. So maybe, okay, if you're 15, you go, oh, I want to see it. I want to see that. You're like, what's his face from Jurassic Park in that scene that I just know the scene of? What's his name? What's his name? Dennis from Jurassic Park with the glasses.
Oh,
What's his name? I don't know his name. He's in that
oh,
scene in Basic Instinct.
oh, Nedry.
Nedry.
Yeah.
Um, you see that as a 15-year-old and go, oh, I want to see that, but you're not
Yeah.
actually getting the matureness of what's going on maybe in that movie
Yeah.
because you're just way too focused on going, what's that there? I can't see it.
Yes,
And
when I
it's
was
just
I
a bit too intense.
well, I mean, when I was doing the polls to see which of these films would get a video podcast episode, when it was a poll between something else and Basic Instinct, I believe some did like reply, "I've slowed that scene down many times and you can't see anything." So
Why? What's the point? Why? Why are you doing it?
so
Why is
I
it a
found that to
thing?
be a very interesting comment, but,
I know it's a very interesting comment. Sure, I know it's a selling point of the movie, and I'm sure a selling point of Fatal Attraction is the fact that it's steamy and violent.
yeah.
But the steaminess and the violence is there for reasons, and it's the
Yes,
reasons
to
that are the
build to the
satisfying.
chaos and build the
Yeah,
tension. This man reaping the, consequences of his actions. So it's like all this kind of fun, passionate thing at first, and then this descent, which builds the tension of the film. So it's there for a purpose to build to something more chaotic by the end.
yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah,
for
I
God's
mean,
sake, when Alex gets involved in them moving to the countryside as
oh,
well,
yeah, yeah.
it's
I mean, even before
terrifying.
that, she keeps calling him and calling him at all crazy hours, and he doesn't wanna answer her, and then when she finds out he blocks, he changes the number to an unlisted
Yeah,
number, she goes crazy as well, to the point where he comes home and he hears her voice in his house, and she sat there
yeah,
talking to his wife about potentially buying their apartment, and he has to act like he doesn't know her, and the wife is being super friendly to her, and it's this really awkward thing. So then they move to this nice country home, and the phone rings as they're moving stuff in, and the tension of that moment where he's like
yeah,
freaked out, like, oh my gosh, there's no way she got my number at my new home. What is going on? I need to answer this before my wife does. And the craziness of just the phone ringing at this point because they've built it up with her calling him and calling him and calling him. And then it turns out to be nothing. So yeah, they really kind of build to these interesting things where her little moments become more frequent and more dangerous. So she's showing up at his house. First, it's the phone calls. Then,
yeah.
she's cutting herself, then she's showing up at his house, then she's, showing up at different places at his job and things, then,
Constantly
um
reminding him of, their impending child together.
oh, yes, yes, and then, that really kind of creepy scene of her where, he's in the parking garage and he's on the elevator and he doesn't see her, but we see
Oh
her on the
god,
balcony
yeah.
above, just, like, all dressed in dark colors, and she's just kind of staring, and then she kind of walks off
It's
very quickly. It's very eerie, and she's
this
put
is what I mean at
acid and stuff all
times.
over his car. Yeah,
Right. At
yeah,
times it is like proper slasher villain,
yeah.
almost supernatural villain. She's always there. We
Yeah, she
can't get rid of
follows
her kind
him
of
to
situation.
his country home, so she finds out where his new home is because she's in the car following behind him. It even gets to the point where, she takes his daughter to
Yeah.
fair and takes her and rides the roller coaster with his daughter.
I
And
mean,
then, of
this
course,
is
the very famous, boiled bunny scene. That's like I
yeah.
that's something I knew about this film. That was, like, the main thing I knew about this film before I had even seen it, was the boiled
Okay.
bunny. Yeah.
See, I I feel like I didn't, but now after seeing it, I feel like I must have done. I feel like I definitely have seen that before. I
Yeah.
wasn't going into this movie thinking, "Ah, yeah, boiled
The
bunny,"
great boiled bunny, yeah.
but when I saw it, I thought, "Oh, I've definitely seen that somewhere. I definitely was aware
So
of
maybe you
that
saw it, like,
particular
out of
shot."
context. Yeah, not realizing that's what it was from, but I always knew that to be because I think even in other movies, when somebody, had an affair or something and they're trying to make a joke of it, you know, boiled bunny is
And I
kind
just
of the terminology to
that's
recall that.
that's why they call it a bunny boiler, isn't it? That's why they call a woman who tries to take an unhinged woman who tries to take a married man away, a bunny boiler. That's why they call it that, isn't it? Why am I an
Yes.
idiot? Why have I never understood that?
So I've never really heard the term used that way, but if it's a common term in a lexicon
That's a
of yeah,
relatively common term that
then
I am familiar with.
yes. Yes, that would most likely be the
It's
reason
to
why.
do with Fatal Attraction. Why didn't I ever know that that was to do with Fatal Attraction?
Yeah,
I'd feel like an idiot
yeah,
now.
but, the scene that where Anne Archer finds out the truth is really
Oh, the
great.
confession.
Yes.
Mm,
It gets to the point where he has to just tell her because I believe is this the point? I can't remember what happened to trigger him to have to tell her. I'm trying to I'm trying to
I
think.
think it's after she's tried to get involved in their move to
Ah,
the
yes.
country home, and she's, you know, met Anna Archer. She's fully,
Yes, she's
she
fully
has some
engaged.
sort of
Yeah.
relationship with Anna Archer. Not a relationship, obviously, but they know each other now, and it's all
Oh,
very
yes, I think it was after the boiled bunny, that's what it was. So the bunny has been boiled, the daughter's crying upset, and so she's,
yeah,
like, wondering what's going on. So he has to tell her, "I know who did this," and he tells her, "Remember that woman who came to the apartment you met?" And
yeah.
she's like, "The blonde woman," and she kind of puts it together immediately, and obviously argument, yelling at him, hitting him, the daughter sees, and,
Mm.
the daughter's having this whole already just very emotional because of her bunny, and then seeing
I
her
mean,
parents fighting.
let's
Um,
point out as well, the daughter's about 6.
yes, yes. Um, and so it's interesting that they also kind of come to this interesting understanding as Alex then calls and he answers the phone and he tells her, she knows everything. So you don't have anything over my head with her anymore.
Yeah,
And she's like, "I don't believe you." And he's like, "Do you wanna talk to her?" She's like, "Why would I wanna talk to her?" And he puts her on the phone and she threatens her
yeah,
and says, "If you come near my family again, I will kill you." So I like that at least there's this kind of understanding to that degree, but then the very next scene, we see him, like, packing a bag because as he's been, like, thrown out,
yeah. It
rightfully so.
yeah, it's a strange kind of, breakup because it's not a breakup
Yeah.
eventually, is it? It's
And
not a
it's
breakup
a
at
bit of a
all.
like, it's a bit of them kind of working together to shut this woman down, but then she still has her issues with him, so then she subsequently still throws him out.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
suppose that's the kind of interesting thing because it's where we say again, I like how nuanced it is. I like how real it kind of is. It's not straightforward. It's
Yeah, it's
not
not cut and
kind of
dry, like, she's quick to
cut
throw
and
him out
dry. Yeah.
without feeling anything for him still. Because even they kind of have a reconciliation before the end of the film happens,
Oh,
because then the next couple
100% they do.
scenes yes, is when, Anne Archer goes to pick up her daughter from school, and she's not there, and then they find out that this woman has taken her, and we
Oh,
see
every
and
scene.
yes, and this kind of juxtaposition back and forth of Anne Archer chaotically trying to drive to where, trying to find her daughter, cut
Yeah.
with Alex on a roller coaster having this fun time with the daughter. And so we're
Yeah.
going back and forth of Anne Archer driving frantically and the roller coaster to the point where Anne Archer crashes into somebody and gets into a really brutal car accident.
Every
Um,
single scene after the boiled bunny
yeah.
is just a complete tension-fueled, tension-filled ramp up to
Yes.
the ultimate final, I
Y
suppose,
uh,
fight of the movie
conflict,
because it
yes.
is.
Yes. So it becomes really interesting once Anne Archer's character is now more involved in what's
It
happening.
really does.
Um,
It
so
really
and
does.
this is like the beginning of the reconciliation between the 2 of them as, Alex ends up just dropping the daughter home, so it was really nothing but a power play to kind of mess with the 2
Yeah.
of them.
And this is
Um,
the fun thing. This is, I suppose, a little bit more of what I thought it might be,
yeah, her
as a
trying to
movie,
mess with him and ruin his life and that kind of thing, as
trying to mess
opposed
with
to
him,
desperately
her
wanting him still.
yeah, her power playing the
Yeah.
entire situation. And it's not too much of that, but when it is that, it's almost more intense, it's almost more
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah, because this is the most, I think, power play move we see her in this kind of descent section of her story.
Yeah,
Everything after she kind of cuts her wrist, she is very vulnerable and like pathetic, like you mentioned, and desperate and needy and out of control. And so this is kind of the one power play. I think the bunny and this are like the one
yeah.
power play move that she makes
The
in the
1-2.
chaos of yes, of every other act that we've seen her portray in this last half.
Can you
Um,
imagine
so
just imagine actually boiling somebody's pet. It's horrific.
I
It's
know.
absolutely it's disgusting. It's awful stuff.
Yeah,
I'm actually taking a minute to actually think about the level of nastiness
that
and
you'd have to
cruelty it takes
do
to do that sort of thing.
yeah, yeah,
It's properly awful, and
yes.
this is what I mean. It's a graphic movie. It doesn't really hold back. Like, you don't just get told that the bunny's been killed. You
No,
see a
it's this
boiled
buildup,
bunny in a
yeah, it's
big
like
crock pot.
yeah, Anne Archer walks into the house, she hears the stove on, she didn't put anything on, it's boiling, it's whistling, she walks up to it, opens the lid, and it's just this, terrifying thing juxtaposed which is this film, like, does a lot of, like,
Yeah,
juxtaposing 2 different kinds of things. So the daughter running to her bunny cage to go play with and see her bunny,
yeah,
juxtaposed to Anne Archer walking up to the stove and finding it, and kind of as the height whistle of the lid coming off, the daughter's scream of finding her bunny gone.
yeah.
Um, and
Good at
so
doing that. It does do that
yes,
a lot.
really well played in terms of showing 2 different sides of something kind of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, yes, I mean, after Alex just kind of kindly drops the daughter home and I even asks her, "Give me a kiss before you go,"
Yeah.
um, uh
I'd like to point out, the daughter doesn't know who Glenn Close is. She has
no,
got no idea
no.
who this woman
She
is
just went
at
with
all.
her and it was fine and,
Picked her up
Auntie
from school.
Alex yeah. So they didn't really teach her much about stranger danger, so bad on them. But, Yeah, I mean, Ann Archer, in this frantic search for her daughter, is in the hospital as she got in this car accident. So we see Michael Douglas rush to the hospital. His daughter's there with Ann Archer's parents, and I love just kind of the shady side eyes that they're giving him because obviously they're
Yeah.
aware of the situation. Look what you've done to my daughter, kind of thing. And he goes in there, and Ann Archer's kind of beat up in the hospital bed, and he takes her hand, and he just kind of starts weeping at her feet,
Mm.
and she kind of looks at him and smiles and gives him this nod that, okay, you're forgiven. Maybe some sense of understanding. Our daughter's safety is paramount. We can protect her better together. You kind of get the sense of all of this just from the kind of look that they give each other. That
You
he's,
do.
just apologizing, groveling at her feet, and she's accepted him back because she feels safer with him around. Look how dangerous it's gotten. I'm, obviously with our daughter now in danger, you're going to be more committed to this family than ever. So, and
Yeah.
I think maybe people could judge her for taking him back, but again,
You know,
I don't
I
feel like the film is asking you to feel some type of way. It's literally you just observing the situation.
it really isn't, because it feels real in this extreme situation for that to happen,
Yeah.
and it feels real that you know that forgiveness is able to occur, because
Yeah.
it does. In the real world, that sort of forgiveness does occur.
Yeah.
So why would it not, particularly in this ridiculously extreme situation that we
Yeah.
find ourselves in this movie, where you actually do have to work together, otherwise you both might just die.
Yeah,
You
because this
know,
lady's
you all, in fact,
nuts.
all three of you, including the 6-year-old child,
Is not
might
safe.
eventually die at the
Yes,
hands of
yes.
Alex.
And we already saw them kind of even try to be on the same page team-wise when she first found out about the affair and says those things to Glenn Close about, "You come near my family, I will kill you."
Yeah.
Um, so then, they're home and she's, bandaged up. She still looks a little bruised. She's getting ready to take a bath. He's being very tentative, getting her pain pills, going to make her a cup of tea. And so this is where we get our big kind of tension filled moment. We did also get a scene prior where after I think she kidnapped the daughter, he goes to her house and him and her get into this big brutal fight.
Yes. Yeah,
And
yeah.
she pulls a knife on him. And I think he
A
has
lot
this
of
moment.
knife There are a lot of knives pulling
Yes.
in this movie
And
from
so
Glenn
he's
Close. Glenn Close
strangling
loves
her.
knife.
Yes, and I think as a lawyer, I feel like he thinks about, "Oh my gosh, if I kill her, I'm
Yeah.
playing into what she wants, and I could get into even more trouble, so I'm not gonna." So, as she comes at him with the knife, he has her drop it, and then he just sets the knife down and leaves. So I love that he has that kind of thought process, and you probably think it's, yeah, due to his lawyerly mind that, "Oh, I better
It
just get
has
the
to
hell
be
out of here."
self-defense. It has to be
Yes. He's
self-defense.
in her home in this kind of situation, so he knows what's gonna happen if he goes too far. But obviously, she took his daughter, so he has to, do something.
Yeah.
So, yes, now he's at home with his wife, attending to her. She's making her bath, getting it ready. He's downstairs
And then
and then,
and
yeah,
then
like, very strategic mirror wipe and
yes, then the movie turns into Candyman
a
temporarily,
little bit.
and you can't say Alex Forrest 3 times into the mirror,
Yeah.
because she'll turn up behind you going, like,
Yeah.
brandishing a knife, giving it all Norman
Also, just
Bates.
a lot of scenes of her in this pure white, like, I
There
think
is,
there's
yes.
some
Sheer
thoughtful.
white.
Yes, there's a thoughtful, I think, quality to putting her in all of this angelic white, and it's sheer, and
Yeah,
you can see her boobs through her dress, and it's very much,
you
playing
can.
into the eroticism of her, temptress kind of
Mm.
ideology and who she is. So a lot of, I think, strategic things costume wise, I think they do with Alex, which I think is interesting as well. But yeah, she's brandishing this knife. She's acting like uh she's in her home, like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Like,
Yeah.
talking to her really crazy, like, this is her house with Michael Douglas, and what are you doing here? And then a big kind of fight ensues with the both of them. And I love that, like, the tub's overflowing and you can see the dripping through the ceiling, and Michael
Yeah.
Douglas isn't noticing it, but the dog's noticing it, and you're waiting for him to hear something or see something. And then he
I
starts
think because
hearing Ann Archer
he's got the kettle
kettle on.
boiling on the stove,
Yes. Yes. So he
whistling.
Yeah,
and he
so
can't hear it.
he's not hearing it, so that's, like, a big tension build, this big fight is happening between the 2 of them upstairs, and he's not noticing all of these cues. Then he ultimately hears his wife scream, he runs up the stairs, and then they kind of go at it back and forth, and,
It is a madly tense little fight because it's in this
yes.
tiny confined bathroom.
Yes, and the
You know,
steam and the
bathrooms.
water overflowing, and it's just all the chaos of just what's happening
Yeah,
in the space on top of this chaotic fight. It's such a good kind of, all of these elements, all of these distracting things to look at just build to the tension and the chaos of the scene. To the
it's
point where
hot, it's tight,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
slippery, the tiled floors, you're
Yes,
slipping
yeah,
all over the place. Shower curtain, bath overflowing it, there's water everywhere, there's steam everywhere, you can
yeah,
barely see anything. I mean, how
yes.
they managed to shoot this without camera lenses hazing up,
Fogging up. Yeah,
fogging up, I do not know, but they did.
yes.
And it's all over the place. It's so tight, it's so compact, you feel like at any point somebody's gonna get a slash across the face.
With this knife just kind of flying around, but he ultimately gets her in the tub, submerged, and is drowning her.
Which
Um
is a horrible visual, I'd like to point
Yes,
out as
and then
well.
she's just laid there, her eyes open in this full tub, and she's just laying there with her eyes open under the water, and it's just this very eerie shot. And so him and Ann
I
Archer
don't
feel like they've subdued the situation, they're gonna be okay, and, you know, then we get very much an iconic scene that I think I also saw this scene before I actually saw the movie as well.
see I wasn't aware this happened in the movie.
Really? Okay.
And I didn't know about this, but I want to focus on the whites of Glenn Close's eyes that you
Oh,
see in this
yes!
drowning
That was
situation.
strange, yes, like,
It's
when she's
it's
underwater, her eyes are white, like they've rolled completely back in her head, or like she's possessed, or it's like this demonic thing almost.
it's really, really unsettling.
Yeah.
And look, okay, there's times in this movie early on, the electricity of Glenn Close's early performance in the movie is
Yeah,
very, very striking, very, very appealing, very, very kind of you're into it. You
yeah,
can see why Michael Douglas is, all
attracted.
very taken with her, very,
Yeah.
very taken with her. You can. I'm a fan of obviously big hair as well. Glenn Close,
Yes.
lovely big hair in this
Wild. Yes.
wild hair.
Yeah.
And then it slowly becomes to the point where she is literally a demon from hell, to the point where she's drowning and she doesn't look human anymore. She does
Yeah.
not actually look like a human being. The whites of the eyes are shown. She's obviously writhing and shaking, and Michael Douglas is really,
Still with
really
the
using
knife in her
every
hand. Yeah.
still with a knife in her hand, using every bit of strength he can possibly have. Let's also point out the knife is properly a Michael Myers kitchen knife as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's the exact same type of
Yeah.
knife. It's massive
Yeah.
and angular, um, big meat knife,
Yeah.
but it's so intense. My hands were clenching up watching it.
Yes.
My everything about me was clenched, I must admit. There was no
Yes.
looseness going on while watching, the
This finale.
finale of Fatal Attraction.
Good, good.
Um, but yeah, I wasn't aware of the final, shall we say, the villain jumps up at the end, and as she
And then
does
Ann Archer is
from
the one who
the
takes the final
bathtub.
shot. So, yeah, the
Yeah.
fact that it's her that does it, and it's kind of plays back to her words on the phone, "You come near my family, I will kill you," kind of thing. So it's this
Is it
callback, this foreshadowing.
kind of a little bit too fantastical horror movie though? That it is just a bit like, "Ugh, I'm back now out of the bathtub just for one
Yeah, I
last
mean, you
scare,"
were
and then
dead enough to have your eyes still open under the water, you know?
right. You had your
Yes.
eyes open, you weren't breathing, you looked dead, completely dead, and then all of a sudden you're able to go, and
Yes. Yeah,
and
it's a little
stand up.
monster movie, it's a little horror, but I think, they
I
do
like it, sure.
considering the film was very much grounded up to that point, I'd give it a pass on having one kind of big, bold kind of stroke that felt a
Yeah.
little fantastical.
And look,
So
it's certainly better than the alternate ending of the movie
Oh,
that we were
yes, which,
aware of.
our good friend Eric Monroe, shared with us as he really loves this film, so thank you, Eric, for sharing this alternate ending, which just feels like it kinda goes nowhere. It plays into, I think, what you thought the film was gonna be, of her kind of beyond her death, from beyond, um,
Yeah,
ruining his life and finding a way to frame him for her death. I think that last finale in the bathtub and none of that happened. It was more something happened at the apartment when they
yeah,
had that big fight. He puts the knife down and leaves in the scene that we see. And then in this alternate ending, she takes that knife with his fingerprints on it and slits her own throat. So
yeah.
now they think he did it. So they come and
Um,
arrest him, take him away. He tells Ann Archer, "Get the number of my lawyer friend. We'll figure this out." As she goes
yeah,
upstairs to get the number from his book of phone numbers, there's the tape because Alex did make him a tape where she's saying all these things about she loves him and she's so sorry and da 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 whatever.
yeah.
And Ann Archer's listening to this tape, and the tape implicates her in saying that she is going to kill herself.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, we see her do it as the final shot of that alternate ending.
yes.
It's this
So
slow-mo, really horrible
oh, yeah,
shot
of her with
of
the knife to her throat and kind of
yeah,
slowly kind of cutting across. And so then Ann Archer has this tape, she has the smoking gun, she runs downstairs, like, excited, like, "Yeah, we can get him out," and then it ends with the scene of Alex cutting her own throat.
yeah,
So, yeah, it's like, why have this thing where it's like, "Oh my gosh, okay, pretty shocking that she, is implicating him." If it ended like that, you would
yeah,
probably feel very frustrated, but it would be an impactful ending. But then for it to just be quickly resolved with, "Okay, we found the evidence, that's gonna exonerate him," and then we see Alex still just being a crazy person. So
yeah.
it didn't quite work.
Like, if the alternate ending was truly alternate, where Glenn Close ends up ultimately kind of winning the movie
Yeah,
because
from
she
beyond the
does
grave.
frame
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
and there's no evidence.
Yeah.
Like that is interesting, but there
Yeah.
is evidence, and we see it within the space of 2 minutes
Yeah.
at this ending,
Yeah.
and it takes all the kind of visceral quality of the actual ending of the movie
Yeah.
kind of away for this um, slower scene,
Yeah.
because the very end of the movie is, you know, Glenn Close jumping back out the bath, her getting shot by Anne Archer,
And
and then
sinking back.
falling slowly down back into the tub, blood all over the wall,
Yeah.
and it's then the slow zoom into a family portrait of the Gallaghers.
Yeah.
The Michael Douglas, Anne Archer, and the daughter,
Yeah.
and to say they can be together again. Here's what's important. They've got rid of the problem, and it's
Lesson learned.
obviously
Yeah.
then lesson learned, I suppose. And it's obviously then I think the police have arrived and removed Glenn Close from the situation, and it's pretty clear
Yeah.
that it's being treated as
Self-defense. Yeah.
self-defense. You don't need that alternate
Extra.
ending
Yeah.
kind of mishmash
Yeah.
to go through. It's interesting,
Yeah.
sure. I like that they went eventually with the actual ending though.
Yes, yes, and I think that would have been an interesting ending had it just ended with her framing him from beyond the grave, and that would have been
Yeah,
very obviously might have been disappointing to people, but it would have made you feel something. It would have given you this visceral, like, interesting reaction that you weren't expecting. So,
yeah, definitely. Well, there
yeah,
we go. Fatal Attraction,
yeah.
1987. What a great way to start the Michael Douglas series it was. Jeannine, Disclosure next week, I think.
Yes, gonna be an interesting, I think in the '90s, a man being sexually, abused in the workplace and
Mm,
people not believing him. So that being a really interesting dynamic to explore in the '90s.
yeah, Demi Moore, if I'm
Yeah.
right in saying
Mhm.
as well. A lot of power plays going on
Yeah.
in that movie. I think we are going to be dealing with a confident woman in that
Yes.
particular movie, not a dangerous woman, sure, but a confident one, not a disturbed one,
Yeah.
as we got in this, and Michael Douglas having to deal with that situation in that movie. Very, very interesting, though. Again, we're dealing with pretty mature subject matter.
Yeah.
Not in a straightforward sense, but also like it's pretty heavy, you know. It's
Workplace sexual
workplace
harassment.
sexual harassment and abuse. It's really, really quite unpleasant to think of. How do these movies manage to do it? Comment on it, and comment on the stuff they do in this movie while still being an effective, thrilling,
Yeah.
satisfying experience. They find really good balance. Fatal Attraction found really good balance.
Mhm.
Like, I never felt it was exploiting the fact of some sort of one night stand or
Yeah.
anything like that. It never felt like it was. It felt just real. It felt genuine. It felt
Yeah.
human.
It built well in terms of the emotional states of the characters and what they're going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm expecting much of the same from Disclosure, obviously, with that different context.
Yeah.
But a great way to start Fatal Attraction. I'm
Yay.
very happy to have watched it now. I'd also like to point out it's obviously where the theme idea for this month's poster for the Michael Douglas series
Yeah.
comes from. The scratches, the
Yeah.
text, font,
Yeah.
everything is to do with with Fatal Attraction. The white and red. It
Yeah.
was it was a good one to put together, and
Yes.
I
Yeah, you
like
did a good
that.
job with that for sure.
But yes, it isn't the only show we have on the It's Wonderful podcast feed, of course. Monday Madness is there to start the week off. It's a Wonderful podcast, the main show, of course, celebrating old movies every Friday. Hollywood Romance of 1941 is September's series. It starts this week with Sullivan's Travels, Preston Sturgis, Joel McCrea, Veronica Lake. Very exciting things going on
Yeah.
there. Exciting. I said exciting like 84 times there, haven't I? But subscribe to the It's a Wonderful podcast feed on all major podcast platforms, wherever you do listen. Leave your comments over there. As we said, check out the question videos and things like
Yeah.
that on the It's a Wonderful podcast YouTube channel. Subscribe, ding your notification bell as well for all the stuff we have on the YouTube channel, the Patreon and donation links we spoke about before. But if you want to find us on social media, of course, you can. At It's a Wonderful One on the app formerly known as Twitter. You can find me over there at the Purple Dawn with a 3 instead of the E and the because, Jeannine.
3 is the magic number.
On Instagram and TikTok at the Purple Dawn. All your fatal stuff is where.
You can find me at Jeannine _ on Twitter, Jeannine on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. If you want to get any merch for any of our shows, just check the description for the link or search It's a Wonderful Podcast on teespring.com. And if you want to purchase any of my art in print form, you can find that at my Big Cartel shop, g9design.bigcartel.com.
Well, there we go. There is, of course, only one thing left to do. And, well, I would get you to do a Michael Douglas like impression, but I don't know if I should leave that until the very last episode.
I'll need time to practice. He has this kind of nasally voice,
He's
and I don't know.
very, very nasally voice, incredibly nasally voice that Michael Douglas does have. And please do an impression of a fatal attraction,
Oh my
whatever
God.
that means to you. I don't know.
3, 2, 1. I'm not going to be ignored, Morgan.
Now I'm just scared. Bye.
Ah. Yes, we got a lot of